Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chelsea Ray Walters, and my scholarship presentation is called Ladies on Deck, Women in Politics on the Rise. It is important to note that although Kamala Harris has made history for being the very first female vice president of the United States, not only the first female vice president of the United States, but she is also the first woman of color vice president of the United States as well. And as I was saying, it is important to note that although she has made history, that does not mean that there is diversity in politics. In fact, her making it is merely the beginning. There is a drastic difference, as I have said before, when it comes to the number of women of color in politics, but there's also a drastic difference in political science when it comes to men in political science and women in political science. And women of color that are a part of the Republican Party tend to get a little bit more flack when it comes to the party that they have chosen. And this could be because of stereotyping and voting bias. And for instance, many people view women as the weaker and more nurturing. And there's this misconception where women can start a war in just a moment's notice. So that could be a huge factor. And as I've said, women of color that are part of the Republican Party tend to get more flack. That is why Candace Owens is very highly publicized, and many people are always either disagreeing with her or strongly agreeing with her. That just shows the lack of representation. Now, my research questions are, how are women in politics treated versus men in politics? And how are women in society treated based on their political party? And do women of color get treated differently when it comes to politics? The data methods that I use is called a content analysis, and this is a research method that is used to determine the presence of certain words, themes, concepts, just different data. And my objective is to either prove my hypothesis is correct or just completely disprove it. The subject of the analysis is going to be women in politics, and the purpose of this analysis is to analyze the men versus the women in politics, then analyze Caucasian women versus women of color in politics. So I started off my content-based analysis by going to Staley Library, and then I clicked on Access World News, America's News to see the different features. And although a lot of articles had popped up, I wanted to take a different approach. So I decided, although there was a bunch of useful information there, I wanted to narrow it down just a little bit more by choosing between 2 men and 2 women. And in order to do that, I went to Google and I typed in candidates that had ran for the election for 2020. And I chose Cory Booker. He is a Democrat. I chose Kamala Harris, new vice president of the United States. I had chose President Joe Biden, and I had chosen Jo Jorgensen. She was a Democrat that also had ran for president of the United States. The reason why I chose who I have chosen was because Kamala Harris and Cory Booker are both people of color that had ran for different positions, and then Joe Biden and Jo Jorgensen are Caucasian people. So I had done a quick research on Google to see how or what would appear when I had typed in each person's name. And something that I had noticed that seemed to correlate was the fact that almost every article that appeared for Kamala Harris and Cory Booker all were saying that they were the first African-American person that was a part of what they had ran for. So this prompted me to see that there's not very many African-American people that run for different positions or are elected into those positions. Now, as I've said, I found media coverage referring to women of color and how women of color is slowly rising. However, the word first, like I had said, just showed me that there's still not as much of an equal when it comes to women of color or men of color with Caucasian people when it comes to politics. So my conclusion for this is that women of color are particularly underrepresented, and one factor could be because of the representation in the media, which could do to the voting bias. It can do with the how people perceive women in general. That could be playing a huge factor in this as well. So thank you so much for your time.